Darth Sidious, Reign of the Eternal Empire. It began with a whisper, a secret promise traded in the shadows of Coruscant's underbelly, where no loyal citizen dared to look. The promise of a new order, one forged not by compassion or compromise, but by the unbreakable will of a single unseen master. Chancellor Palpatine was merely the mask, a kindly politician, robed in civility, who soothed the Senate with soft words: security, stability, peace. But beneath that placid veneer coiled a being of boundless ambition, Darth Sidious, the last true Sith. When the Republic fell, it did not shatter in a day. It dissolved with thunderous applause, as he had foretold. The Clone Wars left the galaxy exhausted, desperate to surrender freedom in exchange for order. In the final rapturous session of the Senate, they cheered as he proclaimed the birth of the Galactic Empire, and when he returned to his hidden sanctum, deep beneath the Imperial Palace, Sidious shed the final remnants of Palpatine's mask. In that chamber, where colossal statues of long-dead Sith lords brooded in silence, he allowed himself to smile. At last, the Sith ruled the galaxy openly. He spent countless hours alone, seated upon a throne of cold black dura-steel, surveying the holographic stars arrayed before him. Every system was an ember, waiting to be snuffed out or fanned into a forge of conquest. He could feel each of them through the dark side, the worlds kneeling in submission, the governors scheming for favor, the last Jedi fugitives trembling in the outer rim. The Empire was an extension of his mind. The Imperial Navy, endless legions of star destroyers, was its muscle. The Inquisitors were its claws, raking the galaxy for hidden Force sensitives. And Vader? Vader was its burning heart of hate. Through Vader, he enacted the final purges of the Jedi. Sidious watched with quiet delight as temples were desecrated, holocrons shattered, and the survivors hunted like vermin. But he was not content merely to destroy the old. He would replace it with something enduring. He rebuilt society itself. In every classroom, children were taught that the Jedi betrayed the Republic, conspiring with the Separatists to topple civilization. History was rewritten, facts twisted beyond recognition. Every triumph of the Republic was recast as the Emperor's singular achievement. Fear alone was not enough. Fear could breed rebellion if left unchecked, and so he layered his dominion with indoctrination, spectacle, and surveillance. Grand parades displayed endless ranks of white-armored stormtroopers. Loyalty celebrations were staged in the capitals of newly subjugated worlds. Holonet broadcasts proclaimed the Emperor's wisdom as the sole reason the galaxy had not collapsed into ruin. In secret, he pursued experiments that blurred the boundary between life and death. He combed the arcane texts for ways to prolong his existence, some hidden alchemy that would grant him dominion beyond mortality. For Sidious had no intention of surrendering his throne to time. He would be the father of all civilization, eternal and unquestioned. And yet, flickers of resistance endured. Cells of insurgents coalesced in hidden strongholds. Saboteurs struck at Imperial convoys and communications relays. Whispers of a rebellion began to stir. Sidious regarded these defiant sparks without fear. In his meditations, he had glimpsed the myriad futures. Even in the most improbable outcomes, his reign persisted. The rebellion, he believed, would only give him cause to tighten his grasp. On nights when the galaxy seemed most restive, Sidious would stand alone at the viewport of his palace, gazing down upon the shimmering lights of Coruscant. He stretched out his senses across the void, past the fleets, past the worlds in chains, and felt the undercurrent of dread that bound billions to his will. It was a melody only he could hear, composed of anguish and obedience. It sustained him. It exalted him. For in that darkness, he was invincible. He was Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, Emperor of the Galaxy, Master of the destiny of all living beings, and he would rule forever. Vader's hunts. In the age of the Empire, the Jedi became myth, but in the shadows, a few survived, hidden behind false names and humble disguises, hoping the Emperor's gaze would never fall upon them. They were wrong, for Sidious had unleashed a weapon more relentless than any army, Darth Vader. Once Anakin Skywalker, now little more than a wraith entombed in black durasteel, Vader was the blade that severed the last threads of the old order. Sidious watched with cold satisfaction as his apprentice scoured the stars. Every Jedi name was recorded in the Inquisitorious archives. Every possible refuge, from the ruins of ancient temples to the sewers of outer rim cities, was charted in meticulous detail. When Vader came, there was no warning, only a suffocating stillness as his shuttle descended. He was the herald of extinction. The hunt always began the same way. A small settlement on some forgotten world would receive an imperial transmission. By decree of the Emperor, all citizens shall submit to security inspection. Stormtroopers would cordon the perimeter. Civilians were herded into the square, too terrified to speak. Then came the hiss of Vader's respirator. He emerged from the landing ramp, black cape trailing like a funeral shroud, his presence a storm in the Force. Even those who had never known the Jedi Order felt it, a cold certainty that something ancient and merciless had come for them. He did not speak. He did not negotiate. The Force guided him unerringly. He could sense the smallest tremor of fear, the briefest flicker of defiance. No disguise could hide the spark of a Jedi mind. In an instant, his crimson blade ignited. No plea was heard, no mercy was shown. The survivors of Order 66 fought desperately, some with lightsabers long hidden, some with nothing but their faith. But Vader was a living engine of hate. Blaster bolts curled away from him, walls crumbled beneath invisible pressure. He would lift a Jedi from the ground with a single gesture, crushing their throat as their saber clattered uselessly to the floor. Witnesses never forgot his silhouette, that towering figure wreathed in darkness, illuminated by the glow of his blade. When the killing was done, stormtroopers set fire to the homes and temples, records were purged, HoloNet broadcasts reported nothing more than a subversive cell neutralized, but the terror remained. In the Emperor's private throne room, Vader would kneel before his master to deliver proof of each eradication, a lightsaber, a coded holocron, a broken insignia. Sidious would accept these tokens without comment, though inwardly he exulted. Each death was a final severing of the Republic's memory. And so the hunts continued, across the mid-rim, into the hidden enclaves of Jedha and Lothal, even to the shattered ruins of old Jedi strongholds. No sanctuary was beyond Vader's reach. In the end, there would be no one left to remember the Order, no one left to teach its ways, only Sidious and Vader, master and apprentice, standing triumphant over the bones of the past. For this was the destiny of all who opposed the Emperor's design, extinction. The last light of Master Belvalis. The target was known as Master Belvalis. He had once been a respected Jedi consular, a scholar of the living Force who believed knowledge, not war, could heal the galaxy's wounds. When the Jedi Temple fell, he escaped Coruscant carrying a single satchel of priceless scrolls, ancient records of Force philosophy the Emperor was determined to obliterate. For years, Belvalis eluded the hunters. He changed identities. He erased his presence in the Force. He became a ghost among refugees and traders, but ghosts left traces, and Sidious missed nothing. His sanctuary was the moon of Neris, a cold twilight sphere orbiting a dying red giant. Neris was a place no traveler visited willingly. Cracked plains of obsidian stretched for kilometers beneath a choking sky. In the crags stood an abandoned monastery, once a retreat for contemplative mystics, now repurposed as the Jedi's final refuge. When Vader's shuttle descended, the wind howled like a wounded animal. Stormtroopers established a perimeter, but the Dark Lord did not wait for them. He advanced alone, his silhouette framed in the glow of the engines. Each step crunched across brittle, glassy soil. He could feel Belvalis inside the monastery, the last ember of a defiant flame. The doors opened at his approach, and there the Jedi stood, an old man in tattered robes, spine still straight despite years of hiding. He held no lightsaber, only a polished wooden staff, as if clinging to the memory of a gentler time. "Anakin," Belvalis said, voice soft as the wind, "I mourn what you have become." Vader did not answer. The crimson blade ignited with a shriek. Belvalis closed his eyes and inhaled, once, deeply, as if to fill himself with the memory of all he had loved. Then, at the last, he raised his hand and drew upon the Force not for violence, but for understanding. A whisper passed between them, a final plea, "You are not beyond redemption." But there was no redemption, only the dark side, only the will of Sidious. Vader's hand clenched, the staff splintered. The old man collapsed to his knees as invisible pressure crushed his body. The ancient scrolls fell around him in a cascade of parchment. The monastery burned. From orbit, Imperial sensors recorded the fire as it consumed the last records of 1,000 years of Jedi wisdom. Ash billowed into the twilight sky. When the flames subsided, Vader retrieved a single object, the broken circlet Belvalis once wore as a mark of the consular rank. He returned to Coruscant and laid it at the Emperor's feet. Sidious regarded the token in silence. In the depths of his ruined face, something that might have been satisfaction flickered. One more light extinguished, one more victory in the war to erase the Jedi from history. And in the darkness of the throne room, the Emperor whispered, "Well done, my apprentice. The galaxy is ours." Knight Tamu Lan, the Flame of Vandor. Her name was Tamu Lan, a Jedi Knight forged in the fires of the Clone Wars, not a general by choice, but by necessity. Unlike many, she survived Order 66 not by fleeing, but by fighting. After the Purge, Tamu vanished into the deep Midrim to the storm-blasted world of Vandor 9, a mountainous planet with jagged cliffs, ancient stone temples, and endless clouds. The world was barely charted, remote, dangerous, isolated, perfect for hiding. But nothing was hidden from the Emperor for long, not if it burned with the light of the Force. Sidious had felt her presence, a flicker of rebellion, like a blade still glowing from the forge. He dispatched his inquisitors to find her. They failed, so he sent Vader. The hunt began with a massacre. An entire Imperial scout team went silent, slain at high altitude, their remains frozen into a cliffside shrine, Jedi runes carved in bloodless ice. It was both a warning and a challenge. Vader accepted. He arrived in silence, descending through storms so thick the clouds screamed against the wings of his shuttle. The world below was harsh and unforgiving, all jagged rock and plummeting drops. He found her waiting, not cowering, not hiding, waiting. She stood atop a cliff spire beneath the broken moonlight, clad in a battered clone-era tunic, her copper lightsaber gleaming. Around her, the wind howled like a beast. "I knew you'd come," she said, her voice steady through the storm. "I wanted you to." Vader said nothing, only ignited his saber and stepped forward. The duel was ferocious. They fought across the ledges and narrow bridges carved into Vandor's face, flashes of red and gold streaking through sleet and shadow. Tamu moved with precision and fury, a master of Ataru, her strikes like lightning, her leaps as wild as the wind. But Vader was relentless. His blows were thunder, his defense unbreakable. When she disarmed him for a breathless moment, Vader summoned his blade back to his hand with a snarl of the Force. and unleashed a shockwave that shattered the ledge beneath them. They fell, slamming into ice, sliding down the cliffside into a frozen temple long buried beneath the rock. There, in the dark, it ended. Wounded, frostbitten, Lan stood one last time among the statues of long-dead Jedi Masters. Her saber flickered, sputtering, as she glared through broken breath at the monster in black. "You're not a Sith," she said, barely able to raise her blade. "You're a slave in armor." Vader impaled her without hesitation. As she collapsed, she did not cry out. Instead, she smiled, just a faint curl of her lip, as if she'd seen something beyond death, something that Vader could not. The temple collapsed moments later. The Emperor later demanded the site be bombarded from orbit. Nothing was to remain. No records, no names, no monuments, only silence. But in the years to come, whispers would surface among the mountain tribes of Vandor, stories of a copper light that once danced across the sky, defying the darkness with beauty and fire. And though Vader had destroyed her body, the legend of Tamu Lan survived. A flicker, a spark, a reminder that not every Jedi died begging, some died fighting. The fall of Jedi Knight Selis Khan. Her name was Selis Khan, a Jedi Knight of the Mid-Rim campaigns, once lauded for her compassion and her unmatched skill in telepathy. She had trained under Master Deepa Bilaba and was considered among the most gifted, empathic seers of her generation. But war changes every heart. When Order 66 descended, Selis survived by embracing deception and secrecy. She fled to Ossoval, a dusky world of volcanic plains and half-buried Sith ruins, haunted places the Jedi had long forbidden. In her desperation, she studied what the Council had once denied her: ancient tablets, whispering holocrons, secrets that promised power enough to avenge her fallen friends. Years passed, the guilt deepened, and in her loneliness, the darkness began to speak. Vader came for her at last. He arrived as the sun set behind rivers of lava. The fortress she'd claimed as her refuge was a labyrinth of scorched halls and crimson-lit chambers. He walked its corridors unopposed, no alarms, no guards, only the echo of his respirator. At the heart of that black citadel, Selis waited on a dais of cracked obsidian. She no longer wore Jedi robes, only a dark tunic, the crest of the Order cut from the cloth. Her lightsaber rested in her lap. When Vader entered, she lifted her gaze and studied him, not with fear but with exhausted recognition. "I felt you coming," she said, voice low. "For months." Vader did not answer. He simply watched and waited. Selis rose, her eyes reflecting the coals of the dying sun. "Do you think me a fool? Do you think I don't see what you are?" The air thickened as the dark side pooled between them, an unseen current linking their thoughts. "I have read the same secrets you did," she continued. "The Sith teach survival, dominion, certainty. The Jedi taught only restraint." Her voice broke, as if she were ashamed to feel the truth of her words. "And look what that gave us." Vader extended a gloved hand. "You have already chosen." She closed her eyes. The silence stretched between them, taut as a blade. And in that moment, she surrendered. When she opened her eyes again, something gentle had died behind them. Selis ignited her blade, once blue, now bled into a throbbing scarlet. The last of her illusions were gone. In the weeks that followed, the Emperor welcomed her as an instrument of the Inquisitorius. She knelt before the Black Throne as Sidious raised a skeletal hand in benediction. "Rise, my child," he whispered. "Embrace the truth you were always too blind to see." and so she became the 12th sister, hunter of the survivors she once called her kin, a voice on Imperial broadcasts warning that all hope was treason. Among the hidden Jedi enclaves, her story was told in hushed tones. Selis Khan, the healer who became the butcher, proof that in the Emperor's galaxy, even the brightest hearts could be devoured by the dark. Twelfth Sister, a blade without mercy. 1 year later, the galaxy knew her now not as Jedi Knight Selis Khan, but as the 12th Sister. Once, she had been a beacon of empathy, a healer, a listener, a protector of the weak. Now she was a shadow that whispered through the stars. Her crimson blade had ended 6 Jedi in 12 months. Her voice was the last thing Padawans heard before the dark. You can still live if you kneel. They never did, and she never wept. Not anymore. The mission, Florum. Her latest assignment came from Vader himself. A Jedi cell has taken root on Florum, he told her, his voice cold and grave. You will burn it out. She said nothing. She only bowed. Florum, a backwater world of rocky spires and criminal dens, once the playground of pirates like Hondo Ohnaka. Now, its underground tunnels hid fugitives. Among them, Jedi Knight Tash Elodie, one of Khan's former comrades. They had trained together on Ilum, shared meals, shared missions. Tash had once patched a shrapnel wound in her ribs after a skirmish on Felucia. Now he was the next name on her list. The confrontation. She descended into Florum's caverns with her mask off. She wanted him to see her face. Tash stood in the dark with a training saber in hand, shielding a trio of younglings. His eyes were sunken, his body thin from months of hiding, but his presence in the Force was still luminous. Selis, he whispered, it's really you. She stared at him without blinking. Her blade hissed to life, its red glow painting the stone walls. You can't save them, Tash. I'm not here to save them, he replied, igniting his own saber, green and brilliant. I'm here to remind you who you were. Their duel was brutal, fast, and full of unspoken history. He still fought with the old Form 5 forceful, clean. She fought with a corrupted variant of Soresu, all punishment and pressure. They clashed in silence, no banter, no pleas, only pain. She struck him down after 12 minutes, precise, surgical. The old wound he had once healed, she reopened it. He fell. As the youngling screamed, she lifted her saber to finish it, but froze. For a fraction of a second, the Force pushed back, not with power, but with memory. Laughter in the temple, snow falling on Ilum, Tash placing his cloak over her shoulders during a monsoon on Kashyyyk. She turned her blade off. Run, she hissed to the children. Now, they fled. She stared at Tash's body for a long time. Then she activated her comlink. The Jedi is dead, she said. The sight is clear. A lie, but no one would question it. Not even Vader. In the silence. Back on her ship, the Shadow Glass, she sat alone in her quarters. Her mask rested on the table before her. Her hands trembled. She didn't understand why. She stared into the reflection of her eyes. Once warm green, now paled and clouded. I did what was necessary, she whispered. I always do what is necessary. But the doubt had begun. A crack in the armor. A whisper in the dark, softer than Vader's commands, subtler than Sidious's poison. Her name, Selis. and she hated it. Because it meant she wasn't lost, not entirely, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. Twelfth Sister, Judgment in the Dark. 2 weeks later, the shadow glass drifted in the void between rim systems, waiting for her next assignment. The 12th Sister spent her hours in meditation, trying to silence the memory of Florum, the memory of the children she'd let escape, the memory of Tash's eyes as she struck him down. She almost succeeded, until her ship's alarms began to wail. A single transmission, no codes, no identification, only a voice, as cold as an open grave. Prepare for docking. Vader. The arrival. She waited in the main hangar as his Lambda shuttle descended, the ramp lowered, spilling steam over polished Durasteel. He emerged, tall, implacable, his silhouette the nightmare of every hidden Jedi. The 12th Sister stood at attention, masked again. Only her gloved hands betrayed her, curled into fists behind her back. He did not speak as he approached, did not slow. The deck felt smaller with each of his steps. The interrogation. At last he stopped, the black lenses of his helmet fixed on her. "Report," he ordered. She answered in the flat, disciplined cadence they all used before him. Night Tash LOD was located and terminated. The younglings perished in the collapse. A lie repeated is easier the second time. But Vader said nothing. Instead, he lifted one hand. The force constricted around her throat. Not enough to crush her windpipe, but enough to steal her breath and pin her in place. "You think me blind?" She did not answer. Could not. His grip tightened. The survivors were seen boarding a freighter. They have since been intercepted on Dalna. Her heart thundered in her chest. He knew. "You lied," Vader continued, his voice low and pitiless. "You failed." The pressure vanished. She fell to her knees, gasping. "Mercy is treason," he said. "Sentiment is weakness." His lightsaber ignited with a hiss, a column of red light casting her shadow long across the deck. "Do you deny it?" Her voice was hoarse but steady. "No." The choice. Vader's saber hovered inches from her throat. In that moment, she thought he would end her, and perhaps part of her wanted him to. But then the blade extinguished. "You will hunt them again," he commanded, "and you will bring me their heads. And if you fail me a second time..." He leaned closer. The respirator rasped in the dark. "You will learn what it means to be truly broken." He turned without another word and strode back to his shuttle. As the engines roared to life, she remained kneeling, staring at the deck where his saber had nearly ended her. For the first time in a year, she felt something like tears behind her mask. Not for the Jedi she was, not for the Inquisitor she had become, but for the certainty that she could never go back, and she could never escape. Twelfth Sister, The Last Rebellion. 2 years later. By then she was a name spoken in fear across the outer rim. 12th Sister, the Hunter, the Interrogator, the Blade. But no matter how many Jedi she found, no matter how many hidden enclaves she burned, she could not quiet the voice that haunted her dreams, Tash's voice, the children's cries, her own name, Celis. That name became a fracture, and the fracture became a wound, the final spark. It happened on Dalna, where the last of the younglings she had spared had grown into a small insurgency. They had no ships, no weapons worth the name, only conviction and the memory of what she had done. When she cornered them in the catacombs beneath an abandoned temple outpost, they did not beg, they stood together, hands joined. And she saw herself so many years ago, standing in the council chamber, swearing to protect the innocent. She could not raise her saber. In that moment she realized she had become the very thing she once hunted. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Go. Run." They fled. She didn't stop them. Instead, she turned and activated her comm. Her words were calm, calmer than she had felt in years. "Lord Vader, this is the 12th sister. I have failed you. I will not return." She crushed the comm unit in her hand. "Vader comes." He did not send purge troopers. He did not dispatch inquisitors. He came himself. At dusk, the sky over Dalna lit with the glare of his shuttle's engines. She stood alone in the courtyard of the ruined temple. No mask, no armor, only her tunic and the saber hilt at her side. Fuck. He emerged from the ship without a word. Wind tugged at her hair. Ash from old fires drifted between them. The last duel. "I will not kneel," she said softly. "I know," he replied. His blade ignited, casting her face in red. She drew her saber, still scarlet, though she hated what it meant, and raised it in a final salute. They clashed in a storm of fury and memory. Every strike he dealt was heavier than the last. Every parry she made cost more strength than she had left. He forced her back, step by step, until she stood at the edge of a collapsed atrium. Her knees finally gave out. She fell, breathing ragged, saber flickering in her failing grip. "You could have been powerful," Vader said, voice low and almost sorrowful. "You chose weakness." She looked up, tears bright in her eyes. "I chose myself. I chose Celis." His blade came down in a single merciful stroke. Aftermath. Her body was never recovered. The Emperor marked her name from the Inquisitorious records as if she had never existed. But the younglings she had spared remembered, and in time they passed on the story of the Inquisitor who was once a healer, of the hunter who rediscovered her own heart, of the 12th sister who died as Celis Khan, free at last.